take over your trap. Walk in it. Walk your trap and take over your trap.
Walk in your trap and take over your trap.
Walk your trap and take over your trap. Walk your trap and take over your trap. Walk your trap and take over your trap. Walk your trap and take over your trap. 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 Walk your trap and take over your trap. Come on, them coming on!
Welcome back into the Door Report, episode 286 on a victorious Tuesday evening, October 15th, 2024. I am Will Byrum, joined as always by my local radio show dominating co-host Trevor Hulan, aka Hack Squat Jim Duggan, and we're joined here behind the helmet. You can't see her by our producer, Phoebe, who's promised to be very well behaved this evening here at the Door Report. We are presented by 615 Collectibles. If you're into sports cards or sports memorabilia, check out 615 Collectibles on eBay for an unmatched selection of sports cards. Items include football team packs, individual cards, graded cards, and more. So check them out on eBay. That link is www.ebay.com/str/615 Collectibles. Shipping is always fast and free. Trevor, you made the trip to Lexington. You saw the Doors pull off the 20-13 victory in person.
I did indeed.
Over the Kentucky Wildcats. For some reason in my notes, I have it written down 20-17, even though I know that is incorrect. So I'll correct that here. But Trevor, how was the trip? How were the vibes? Did you walk in the trap, take over the trap? How did it go? How did things go in Lexington?
It was an absolute movie. I went with my mom and my dad. My mom used to go to every Vanderbilt football, basketball game. She took a little hiatus for like 27 years, and she's back on board. Mama Squat is a full believer in Diego Pavia, so she made the trip up to Lexington. Actually, her second time to Lexington. It was an absolute vibe. Me and the goons, Jalen Merrick, shout out Cornelius on Twitter, Braden McPherson, had Kentucky fans in an absolute chokehold. They did not know what it was like to experience a real SEC fan base in their house. As you stated, we walked in their trap, took over their trap. They didn't know what hit them, baby.
Vanderbilt, after that victory on the road at Kroger Field in Lexington, Vanderbilt moves to 4-2 on the season, 2-1 in SEC play. Unfortunately, with that Georgia State loss, not good enough to be ranked in the AP top 25.
Almost.
Currently sitting at number 26 in the AP poll. I will say I put out a tweet about it. Number 22 Illinois plays number 24 Michigan. Mm-hmm. If Vanderbilt beats Ball State, I will rephrase. When Vanderbilt beats Ball State,
love it,
they will be ranked.
Yes.
So that is the only reason, outside of the fact that truly, I know Vanderbilt beat Alabama, took Missouri to double overtime. But from an objective outside ratings perspective, that loss to Georgia State is a damning loss on a resume.
Yeah.
That's a killer loss once you start talking about being ranked in the top 25. Mm-hmm. As far as making a bowl game, you can bounce back from that. But as far as trying to get ranked, that Georgia State loss hurts.
I agree. But, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, it can be redeemable depending on, it's Ball State week. We're going to talk about Ball State. I want to be focused on Ball State. Depending on what you do versus Texas, that can be redeemed. I've already think it's been redeemed by the Alabama game, but I think it can be even more so redeemed in terms of AP or college football playoff rankings.
Okay. There's differences in redeemed in the eyes of Vanderbilt fans and redeemed in eyes of our season. And there's redeemed in the eyes of a high AP or college football playoff ranking.
Yes.
That cannot be done. You cannot redeem yourself for that resume loss. If Vanderbilt wins out, they will make the CFP and probably make the SEC championship. That's not what I'm saying. But assume that's the loss that holds you up from having what could be, and it's already on the path to being a magical season, but what holds you back from truly being a national college football storyline fully is that Georgia State loss.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it can't be overcome, but it is the kind of loss that does stick in your craw.
It's just the thing that keeps nipping at our heels
Yep.
right now. But I'm adopting the Clark Lee mantra of I have burned it and I've released it to my past.
Burn it and release it to your past. But on episode 286, we have the recap of Vanderbilt's win over Kentucky. We will go over key plays. We are editing the play-by-play recap portion to try to reduce the length slightly of these episodes. So I'll be doing key plays in chronological order. Then we'll go through the box score, team stats, give some individual guys some shout outs. Then me and Trevor's 3 key takeaways. Then we will have a TDR cocktail break, go to the Ball State preview, get some interesting stats from our traditional stat man, Trevor Hulan. Usually I'm the stat guy. Trevor's usually the vibes guy, but Trevor's got some stats about Ball State he wants to discuss. Then we will give our 3 keys to the game and me and Trevor's predictions for Vanderbilt versus Ball State. All that and more coming up on episode 286 of The Door Report. Before we get into all that, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Door Report. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and a review on iTunes. It's now time for segment 1. Welcome back into segment 1 of episode 286 of The Door Report. We are going to jump in quickly and get we're going to jump in quickly and get this out of the way early. Vanderbilt beats Kentucky 20-13, moves to 4-2 on the season overall, 2-1 in SEC play. What I was saying I want to get to early and get it out of the way. I was deciding if I was going to jump straight into the recap of the big plays or if I was going to get this thought out of the way before I even described the game. I'm going to get it out of the way early after like 3 back and forths. This win for Vanderbilt, and Trevor, I think we talked about this before. This win was the second win in a row that Vanderbilt has led from beginning of the game to end of the game.
Wire to wire.
8 straight quarters leading in SEC play for Vanderbilt. I think it was a Vanderbilt media notes actually tweeted out that upon initial review, that's the longest streak of quarters that Vanderbilt football has led in SEC play since the 60s.
Yeah.
Upon initial review. So a dominant 8 quarters of football from Vanderbilt. What I can't get over is how different this win was than the win over Alabama. The win over Alabama, I came on here after and said the defense did enough to allow the offense to win the game. I think this game was the opposite. I think the offense did enough to allow the defense to win the game.
Yeah.
So you've now seen defense and special teams.
Yes.
I'll combine both of those in
All
there.
3 phases of the football.
But the offense wasn't explosive. They had some good plays. They did enough. You didn't score a touchdown in the second half, but you did enough to win the game on offense. So winning 2 games in SEC competition, obviously one is against number 1 in the country at home and one is on the road. And you never want to devalue a road SEC victory, but it's crazy how different those games were.
Yeah.
Just the Alabama-Vanderbilt game was back and forth, big play, big play, big play, big play. It was like you couldn't go to the bathroom without missing something huge. The Kentucky game, I wanted to get this stat out early. The Kentucky game was crazy because I don't even know if the offense is played that poorly. The pace of play was just so slow, and both teams had these long, deliberate drives.
Yeah.
There were only 16 total drives in that game between Vanderbilt and Kentucky, and that includes a drive at the end of the first half where Kentucky kneeled out the clock. Do you know how many possessions? And I looked and found a couple different stats, and most of the consensus was this. Do you know how many possessions are in an average college football game, Trevor? On average.
I'll go 14.
26.
What?
Why would you go 14?
I thought you meant per just one.
No, both teams.
Oh, both teams.
So you're close. It's
I thought you meant just one team.
13 for both teams, 26 to 26.2 on average for both teams.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I was close.
So this game had 10 less possessions than the average college football game. So there just weren't that many opportunities. Well, I guess there were opportunities. The offenses just didn't make big plays.
Yeah.
When these teams had drives, they were long scoring drives or long drives in Kentucky's case, coming up with no points.
Exactly. And to your point, the dichotomy of the Alabama game versus the Kentucky game, I think shows how multifaceted this football team is. and that whenever the defense needs to get it done, you can trust the defense to keep you in a ball game. Whenever you need the offense to win you a ball game, you can trust the offense to win you a ball game. I think it shows that Vanderbilt, I think the offense is far superior than the defense. I don't think that's without question. But I think what this game showed you is that the defense can bend, but whenever it's time to nut up or shut up, they nut up, and they do a really, really good job at limiting those explosive plays and really tightening up whenever their backs are against the wall in the red zone. I don't care however much points or however many yards a team averages during a game. They could average 500 yards a game, but if you keep them out of the end zone, that's what matters. And I think that's what this defense does really well.
That seems to be the biggest change. And of course, Vanderbilt has given up big plays. There was a blown coverage against Virginia Tech. There were some big plays against Alabama. They had some lapses against Georgia State. But overall, the difference with Clark Lee at DC has been limiting those big, massive plays that just take the wind out of your sails as a defense. And I think a lot of that honestly has to do with the athletes. Mm-hmm. Those plays that the last couple years have been 65-yard touchdowns are now 28-yard gains, get knocked out of bounds. And I think a lot of that has to do with the scheme Clark Lee is running, leaving safeties higher, allowing some of that underneath stuff. But a lot of it is just athletes and guys that can flat out just run sideline to sideline.
I think that's a great point. Clark Lee loves to run a ton of coverage. Most of the time, he's only bringing 4 guys. He doesn't blitz a ton. He's dropping back 7 or 8 and just letting them play. Doesn't make for exciting football whenever it comes to attacking the quarterback, but in a perfect world, you would love for your front four to get to the quarterback. But that's his style of play, is dropping back and playing coverage, and it's working for this team so far.
And also shout out to Miles Capers. Scary scene. Got carted off the field on a board, but was back on the sideline during the game.
That was so good to
see. Seems to be recovering and doing well. So shout out to Miles Capers.
Clark Lee said they're hoping he could play this weekend.
Yeah, hopefully it was just precautionary more than anything, and just a pinch nerve or a scare as Trevor sneezes over here. But I'm going to get into key plays here. I'm not going to do every single possession, but just try to get some key plays that I had written down after, of course, watching it live and also going back and rewatching the game. So in the first drive, Vanderbilt comes up with a stop. Kentucky has to punt. Vanderbilt gets the ball inside their own 5 on a great punt from Kentucky. I think it was, a
97-yard drive?
97-yard drive. Vanderbilt goes down the field. And to close out that drive, why this is a key play, Diego Pavia had a play that looked awfully similar to a number 2 that wore maroon at Texas A&M named Johnny Manziel, who is talked about openly Diego Pavia views as an inspiration for how he plays.
Basically like his football hero.
His muse. Talked about that openly. He looked like it on that pass. Incredible play from Pavia. I talked about it, and I saw a tweet that said something similar, but the last 25 years, every single Vanderbilt quarterback wouldn't have thrown a touchdown, and in fact would have probably lost 5 to 10 yards getting sacked.
Absolutely.
And instead, it was a touchdown on a huge momentum-shifting play. That is what Diego Pavia has brought to this offense, so that's why I had to bring that up early. Big drive for Kentucky to follow that up. 12 plays, 78 yards. It was 7-7 with 13:42 left in the second quarter. And then Pavia throws inevitably his first interception of the season. Great play by the Kentucky defender, kind of hid behind the defensive line, tipped it up to himself. Great play. But then Vanderbilt gets the ball back. First, I have to bring this up. The interception that wasn't by Bryce Cowan. This was 8 minutes, 54 seconds left in the second quarter. Bryce Cowan dives across a Kentucky receiver to come down with what is ruled on the field and looks like a one-handed interception. If Cowan was never there, first off, what angered me. If Cowan was never there, C.J. Taylor would have easily intercepted it. Number one, effortless interception. But
C.J. Taylor commented on his Insta and said, pick Steeler.
Yeah. But the other side of this that is a larger issue that I have to bring up stemming from this. What has happened? What have I missed with a rule change where indisputable video evidence is gone? Is that gone from the rules? I mean this. I'm not meaning this sarcastically.
No, I'm there with you. I'm there with you.
Did they remove that from the rules? Because I thought it was indisputable video evidence. And I'm not saying this from a fan perspective. There's probably, I would say that is a play that's probably 50-50.
Yeah.
Toss up. Legitimately, from all the camera angles they showed over and over in slow-mo at every angle, you could not tell.
Yeah.
If that was ruled incomplete on the field, it should have stayed incomplete. If it was ruled a catch on the field, it should have stayed a catch and an interception.
I agree.
I don't know what they possibly saw. I would love to interview the head of the SEC Replay Center and tell them to show me what indisputable video evidence, which I want to remind people what indisputable means. It means cannot be disputed.
Yeah.
It cannot be argued with. There can be no counter argument.
A verifiable fact.
It is not disputable.
Yeah.
There can be no dispute. I watched those replays and I put up the tweet that just said, that was in fact very disputable. So I do not understand that. But Trevor, what was it like in the stadium from that? What could you see in the stadium? I don't understand.
So I excuse me. I'm sorry, guys. I have a terrible cough right now. I'm not sick, but it's just my allergies. So in the stadium, I tweeted out whenever that happened, what are they saying on replay? Because it was confusing. I get it was a sellout home crowd. They're going to be biased. They kept showing it on the video board, and us in the Vandy section were like, that's no way in hell you have enough evidence to overturn that. But the Kentucky fans are like, incomplete. I'm like, there is no way on God's green earth there is enough evidence to overturn that based on what we saw on the video board. And so I don't, and people were tweeting at me saying, Jordan Rogers in the booth was saying, this is going to stand. This is going to be a pick. I will say, and then we can keep going, those referees were terrible.
They were awful.
And I think, and call me biased, I am biased, they did everything in their power the entire game to keep Kentucky in the ball game.
I will differentiate something. I think they were legitimately just terrible. And I will hit on in this recap, which is why I don't want to bring up too many discussion points during the recap. I will hit on in this recap where the referees really screwed up in Vanderbilt's favor.
Oh, see, I don't remember one.
There is a huge moment when they screwed up objectively, like just screwed up the clock situation.
Oh,
badly.
Yeah.
Really screwed Kentucky.
Shout out to the refs. I love you guys then.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
But the quote I have written down, ball don't lie. Second quarter, 6 minutes, 46 seconds on that exact same drive. Trudell Berry comes in, puts helmet on the football, forces a fumble, recovered by, who recovered it? Was it Rinaldi?
I think it was Nick Rinaldi knocked out by Trudell Berry.
It was knocked out by Trudell Berry. I think recovered by Nick Rinaldi. Yes, it was. But I also felt bad because Bryce Cowan was also right there and barely missed the fumble recovery. Once again, just right on the – Bryce Cowan was everywhere this game. I want to shout him out early. He was everywhere right around the action. Forced that fumble. Vandy doesn't do anything with it. Around 2.5 minutes left in the second quarter, Vandy punts. Great punt coverage, backs up Kentucky, who also has a penalty on the play, forces Kentucky to punt, gets Vanderbilt decent field position at about the 40-yard line of Vanderbilt's own 40-yard line. And then Vanderbilt goes down the field on the back of known playmaker Richie Hoskins, manifested by Hack Squad Jim Duggan over here, a Richie Hoskins touchdown. But incredible job, Richie. Just taking a giant shit on my head. Richie, white boy Rich, you are a playmaker. I am so utterly sorry for ever doubting your playmaking abilities, sir.
I love it. And you shout out to Will for being such a good guy. Most people will be like, no, and try and spin zone it. Will's like, no, I was wrong. Shout out to white boy Rich. I love that guy. Got the touchdown and made a beautiful catch the play before that.
Yep. I do want to say, though, that you did ask and bring up, why are they not throwing it to Richie? And I was saying because they're still having to account for him as a receiver in their coverage. Seems like Kentucky fell asleep at the wheel a couple times against Richie.
So they doubted white boy Rich.
So I think you've but that was inevitable. I think you kind of got the answer to your question as to why he's not being utilized. They were waiting. They're waiting to show different layers of this offense and waiting moments to utilize. That was a great moment. Great clock management. The announcers were questioning the clock management by Vanderbilt. I thought they did a wonderful job at the end of the half. I don't know what Jordan Rogers and the other announcer were smoking, questioning the clock management at the end of that first half. But Vanderbilt goes into half up 14-7. There were only 9 total possessions in that first half, including the kneel down by Kentucky at the end of the half. Then we go into the second half. Vanderbilt gets the ball to start, has a long 7-minute drive for a field goal. And then I don't even have anything written down. There were only 7 possessions in the second half, like I said. Kentucky goes down, and I think that drive, that's the drive, the second drive of the second half is the one that they drove all the way down the field, got to the 1 yard line. Kentucky did, had a false start, and then their holder botched the hold on a 23-yard field goal.
D-Rock pick.
On the D-Rock pick. So Vanderbilt gets that back, actually drives down the field, 12 plays, 55 yards, takes 8 minutes off the clock, gets a field goal, goes up 20-7. Of course, Kentucky then goes right down the field, 20-13. After scoring a touchdown, Vanderbilt gets the ball back, punts, then gets the stop on Kentucky, kneel down, game over. Vanderbilt wins. That's the very quick summary of the game, as quick as I can possibly make it. Let's get into team stats real quick. Let's actually get into individual stats. Let's go to, I do want to discuss this guy first because there was a point at 6 minutes, 45 seconds, I believe it was, in the third quarter that our sweet, beautiful boy, Diego Pavia, went Phoebe.
She is going crazy.
You said she was going to be good.
Now she's not being good.
She's attacking me.
I'm going to get her. You keep going on your... Oh, my God. She is being a monster.
But Diego Pavia went down with a knee injury in that third quarter. Everything that we have heard is that he's fine. He came back in, played the remainder of the game, clearly still limping, wearing a brace on that knee. How are you feeling about the knee overall? Are you thinking it's going to be a problem? What are you thinking?
So Clark said it was an ankle.
An ankle.
And so, but during the game, I thought it was a knee. And we discussed this before the podcast. Clark Lee has been a very straight shooter during his career whenever it comes to being honest about injuries within the team. He said that Diego Pavia was able to work out, was able to practice, was a part of the team today, looked fine. Am I a bit worried? Yes, because not only the offense, the entire team runs through Diego Pavia, and so you need him on the field. And I am worried that without his mobility, that limits a huge part of his game. So there is a part of me that is a little bit nervous, but I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to trust that Clark Lee is being honest and that Diego is fine and that he is good to go against Ball State.
I'm going to hope so. I will add this in that the whole team kind of runs through Diego, but a huge part of his game is his mobility and legs. If Diego's at 60, 70%, even as talented as he is, as much as we love him on this podcast, I think you're better off going with a 100% healthy Nate Johnson than a 60% healthy Diego Pavia. What Clark Lee has said, like you just said, I think Pavia is higher than 60%. I think he's going to be good to go, but that was a very scary moment for Vanderbilt fans everywhere. Diego Pavia, not a huge flashy game, gaudy game with the stats, 15 of 18, 143 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and the 1 interception. Pretty damn good game overall, though. Again, he has not had a bad game basically the entire season. Diego Pavia, 14 carries, 53 yards. Cedric Alexander, the leading rusher, 11 carries, 58 yards, 5.3 yards per carry. A.J. Newberry, 6 carries, 15 yards. Monty Jones, 1 carry, 9 yards. Vanderbilt receiving, Richie Hoskins, White Boy Rich. The leading receiver for the Vanderbilt Commodores, 3 catches, 44 yards, and a touchdown. A.J. Newberry, 2 catches, 26 yards, and a touchdown. A lot of guys spreading the wealth this game. Eli Stowers, the notable absentee on the reception box score. No catches for Eli Stowers, who is still the team's leading receiver. Junior Sherrill, 2 catches, 23 yards. Cole Spence, 2 catches, 18 yards. Cedric Alexander, 4 catches, 18 yards. And Quincy Skinner Jr., 2 catches for 14 yards. Nick Rinaldi, 1 fumble recovered, forced by Trudell Berry. Vanderbilt was without their leading tackler, Langston Patterson, for the Kentucky game. Brandon Fontenette led the way with 7 total tackles, 5 solos, 1 pass defensed. Brian Longwell, 6 tackles, 1 solo tackle. Nick Rinaldi, who I actually thought had a hell of a game.
Great game.
5 total tackles, 2 solos, 1 sack. Prince Colley, 3 total tackles, 3 solos. Ricky Wright, 3 total tackles. CJ, I'm not going to read through all the guys with 3 total tackles. Overall, a very good performance from the defense as a whole, missing the centerpiece of your defense.
Yeah.
And Langston Patterson. To go through a few more team stats that I have not hit on. Overall, as a team, Vanderbilt ran the ball for 145 yards on 37 carries, 3.9 yards per carry. Kentucky ran the ball 164 yards on 31 carries, 5.3 yards per carry. Overall, Kentucky outgained Vanderbilt 322 total yards to Vanderbilt's 288. But Vanderbilt was 8 of 13 on third down, while Kentucky was 4 of 9. Vanderbilt also did not attempt a fourth down conversion. Kentucky went 1 of 3. And then a huge stat in this game, the penalties. The penalties that plagued Vanderbilt all season, the last couple games, in 2 huge SEC wins, they have won the penalty battle.
Mhm.
That has been a key we have attributed to both of these games against Bama and against Kentucky. Clarkley seems to have slightly corrected it. Vanderbilt only 5 penalties for 57 yards. Kentucky with 12 penalties for 105 yards. Trevor, that's the game recap. That's the stat breakdown. Vanderbilt's 4-2. We're about to get to our 3 key takeaways from the game. How are you feeling? Full vibe check. 4-2. Ball State on the horizon. How was that celebration in Lexington? How are we feeling?
Dude, so full vibe check. Once again, I'm always looking through gold colored glasses, but I think even if I take the gold colored glasses off, I think I have the same vibe right now. I'm going to go 10 out of 10. I think it is impossible. And I get it, guys. I know the Georgia State game happens. I know I hate it as much as everybody. I'm having a hard time finding a reason not to be excited, ecstatic, happy, and proud to be a Vanderbilt Commodore fan right now. I think what this team has done so far has been resilient. I think they have done things that no other Vanderbilt football team in history has done. I think Clark Lee's done a great job. I am very, very happy overall. 10 out of 10 vibes. In terms of the Kentucky game, vibes were sensational. The Vandy section carried a lot of Vandy fans. I will say shout out to all you guys. Kentucky fans suck. They were so soft. I was leaving the game, and dude, so many guys wanted smoke, and I was like, all right, dude, I'm 10 toes down. Hey, I'm right here, big dog.
Pain and trembling are out.
Dude, no, hey, dude. I'm with my parents. I'm like, hey, Mom, Dad, go to the car. Your son's got this. I love being a door right now.
Vibes 10 out of 10 for once. It's good to be gold, and we're not saying that sarcastically.
Before we go do you have a vibe check? I want to hear your vibe check.
My vibe check will be in the 3 key takeaways.
Hell yeah.
That'll be my vibe check. But do you want to go ahead and get to those 3 key takeaways?
Hell yeah.
You go ahead and start it off. I've talked a lot early in this episode.
So my key takeaway number 1 from the Kentucky game is Brock Taylor was the MVP of the football game. And I'm not saying that because Brock Taylor, close personal friend of the pod. We do love Brock Taylor here. Look at the stats. Look at the way the game played out. Rewatch the game. Without Brock Taylor making those big-time kicks and big-time game-saving tackle on the kick return, Vanderbilt does not win that ball game. So key takeaway, I think Brock Taylor had a sensational game. He continues to be absolutely stellar. It is so nice for once in Vanderbilt fans' life to have a good kicker. We haven't been able to say that since Kerry Spear. And so I am so incredibly thrilled to have amazing special teams. Shout out Jesse Merkel, been absolutely nothing but sensational in his role as well. Special teams overall have been awesome. I think Brock Taylor is my MVP for my key takeaway number 1.
Okay, I'm glad that settles it. I had 4 takeaways written down for my 3 key takeaways. One of them was special teams won them that game.
Mm-hmm.
Objectively, Brock Taylor knocked through a 51-yarder and knocked through another in the 30s. Kentucky botched an extra point and botched a 23-yard field goal.
Mm-hmm.
That right there is a 10-point swing. If Vanderbilt misses both those field goals and Kentucky converts both those, that's the difference in the game. Mm-hmm. So special teams won the game. That was going to be one of my key takeaways, so thank you for taking that off my plate. My key takeaway number 1, and I'm sorry that a lot of the key takeaways have been broad from me. That was actually going to be a specific one, but Trevor stole it. My key takeaway number 1 is going to be this is truly a new Vandy. I was hesitant to say it after the Alabama game fully. I know it was a new Vandy just beating Alabama. Just that in and of itself is the best win in program history. So that is a new Vandy in and of itself with that. But taking all that media hype, taking all that attention, all the interviews Diego Pavia did, they got some sponsorship from some headphone company with CJ Taylor and those guys. So all of that distraction, and it could have been very easy to go on the road against a solid Kentucky team coming off with a lot of momentum, coming off a bye week after beating Ole Miss.
At Ole Miss,
Playing Georgia to a 1-point ball game. This is not a bad Kentucky team. Do not let people frame this and flip this now because Vanderbilt beat them. Okay, this is not a bad Kentucky football team, but this is a game traditionally that Vanderbilt would have come out, looked very flat, not gotten dominated, but lost the game by 10 points. And you would have said, damn, this was a big opportunity with Ball State on the horizon. And they didn't. Clark Lee won the middle 8.
Great point.
Clark Lee won the middle 8. I'm taking 2 keys and shoving them into one, and I screwed up. This should have been my key take. This will be my key takeaway number 2, and then you'll do your number 2. This was actually my key takeaway number 2, but it flows in from my number 1 so well. That was a complaint we have had with Clark Lee since he got on campus, is being piss poor in the middle 8. In this game, Clark Lee won it. Clark Lee won the middle 8 10-0, and Vanderbilt won this game by 7 points. A touchdown with 16 seconds left or 13 seconds left to Richie Hoskins. And then on that first drive of the game coming out of halftime, Vanderbilt kicks a field goal. All of a sudden, you're up 2 scores, and it looked like best case it was going to be a tie game at halftime. All of a sudden, now you're up 17-7. Shout out to Clark Lee for the growth. Key number 1, this is a new Vandy. Key number 2, Clark Lee versus the middle 8. He's actually winning. So those are my 2 key takeaways to start out.
I love that middle 8 key takeaway. I didn't even think about that, but you're absolutely right. That was a great takeaway. Shout out to Clark Lee. My key takeaway number 2, I'm going to eat some crow. Will ate some crow on Richie Hoskins. I'm going to eat some crow as well on another Vandy football player. His entire career, I have been very, very, very critical of Xavier Castillo. I have been hypercritical of him. I've knocked him down. I've said he is not a good football player. I've said he shouldn't start on the offensive line. I'm going to walk that back and say that I was wrong. Xavier Castillo at center is legitimately the unsung hero of the offense. In my opinion, what he has been able to do at center versus Alabama, an elite front 4. I get it. People are going to be like, oh, it's not the traditional Alabama front 4. Composite ratings and just sheer talent and size that Alabama has at the 3 tech and the 0 tech position that they were sometimes running. And he held his own. Clean pocket in the interior. The interior never collapsed. As well as in the Kentucky game against Walker, who is a premier interior defensive lineman, is going to play in the NFL for a long time. Xavier Castillo manhandled him all game long for 4 quarters. Xavier Castillo moving to center has been a legitimate game-changing move for the Vanderbilt offense. And shout out to Xavier Castillo. I was wrong. I take it back. I am sorry. He is the unsung hero of the offense.
Shout out Coach Klanakis for making that decision and making that move. Shout out to Castillo for performing well, but shout out to Klanakis for seeing there was a deficiency in the offensive line and fixing it. My key takeaway number 3, I'm glad you brought up the O-line. Mine is also semi-blocking related in my key takeaway number 3, but it's player-specific and not the offensive line. And that is going to be Cedric Alexander and A.J. Newberry are becoming something special right in front of our eyes. You watched it start a little bit towards the end of last season with that kind of 1-2 punch. This year, Cedric Alexander and A.J. Newberry have taken the step you hope running backs will take from their freshman season to, I want to remind you, and I want to reiterate this, their sophomore season. These guys are sophomores. The Vanderbilt NIL is going to have to get some money together, but these guys are sophomores, and they will be back for at least 1 more season, likely 2 more seasons for both of them. But it's not just running the football. I think A.J. Newberry's the straight line speed guy. Cedric Alexander's the more every down back guy. But Cedric Alexander blocking. He is a fullback, elite fullback level blocker at the running back position who is also your RB number 1. You want to go back, watch that Kentucky game. There were some highlights that people posted emphasizing what Cedric Alexander did. But just every single time in pass protection, Cedric Alexander almost every time was perfect. And also want to shout out Cole Spence, kind of gets overshadowed by Cedric Alexander's blocking. Cole Spence has done an incredible job blocking at that tight end position as well, has made a huge difference. And something that Vanderbilt was severely lacking last season was a tight end with blocking ability. So shout out to Cole Spence, but specifically Vanderbilt has a two-headed monster brewing and ready to go right now. I mean, you've seen glimpses of it. AJ Newberry and Cedric Alexander can keep you in games the same way you could say Diego Pavia can keep you in games. I fully believe that the backfield for Vanderbilt is the brightest spot on this roster for the future.
That's a great point. We haven't seen a backfield tandem like this since Stacey Norman. We really haven't, and so those guys have been sensational. Not just in the run game, not just in the blocking game, in the pass pro, in the passing game,
Receiving.
I believe AJ Newberry caught the first touchdown of the game versus Kentucky. So they've been sensational. My key number 3, I've talked about it on previous pods, especially during this season. I want to reiterate it. What Nick Lazinski does with this linebacker core is truly sensational. The way he had the linebackers playing without your top dog on the entire defense. I get it. You could totally make the argument that CJ Taylor is your top dog. You could totally make the argument that Randon Fontenette might be your top dog. You could also make the argument that Langston Patterson is the top dog on the defense. You got 3
He's
guys.
The leading tackler.
Yeah. You have 3 dogs on the defense, and you were missing probably your premier defensive player in Langston Patterson, an absolute game changer on that side of the ball. And Nick Lazinski, and not just Nick Lazinski, but the linebacker core in general, I totally agree with you. I think Nick Rinaldi had a great game. Bryce Cowan, shout out to Bryce Cowan for his coming out party. Prince Colley wasn't on the field a ton, but did make a couple of plays. And Brian Longwell continues to be a shining star, I think.
I thought Longwell did okay in that role. I really, on TV, it's a different perspective than in person. Longwell didn't play bad. I don't mean it that way. You really felt Langston Patterson.
No. I'm not disagreeing with that.
There were a lot of times when, especially early in the game, is when I noticed it the most, but it was probably happening all game. There were a lot of times when Kentucky ran a play and you went, damn, if Langston was here. Especially early, there were multiple times and it felt like Longwell crashed and just wasn't able to make the play. And I'm like, damn, Langston makes that play. Langston, right? It's like Longwell's only a sophomore, I believe.
He's young.
He has time to grow, and that's the weakest part of his game, I believe, is just filling the gap and making the tackle.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying he played poorly, but Langston, in my opinion, is the least replaceable guy on your entire defense.
No,
he's the guy you cannot have out.
And I
still won.
I totally agree with that, and that's why this is my key number 3, is because you were missing your top dog, and he still called the game and still had guys step up. And obviously they didn't fill the role to the same capacity that Langston would have, but they mitigated damage and made big plays. Like you said, that Bryce Cowan pick should have been a pick. So shout out to Nick Lazinski. Shout out to the linebacker core, missing your top dog on defense and still being able to limit damage and as well as make big plays. I think we have a really, really, really stout linebacker core, very deep as well.
That's about all I have for the Kentucky game. Turns out Vegas was just wrong. Vegas doesn't always know something. Vegas was just very wrong. I wish that I didn't have the hesitance in my mind with my gold-colored glasses. I did put a lot of money on Vanderbilt. I wish I would have put more. Shout out to the Doors. 4-2 on the year. Ball State and Texas on the horizon. Trevor, I think it's time for a TDR cocktail break. You ready?
Yeah, I got a tingle bad.
Everybody out there, grab yourself a cold one or a hot one. It's getting a little warmer out there, and we will be right back after the TDR cocktail break. Welcome back from the TDR cocktail break, and welcome back into episode 286. We have the Ball State preview, me and Trevor's 3 keys to the game, and me and Trevor's predictions. I'm not going to lie to you, Trevor. I do not have a ton of information on Ball State. I know you are usually the vibes, what is the term?
Ball Sack State?
Ball Sack State. But you have some analytics on Ball Sack State that you want to get out there. I'm going to run through their schedule real quick, what they've done so far this season. Ball State coming out of the MAC, 2-4 on the season so far. opened up the year in week 1 with a win over Missouri State, their FCS opponent for the year, 42-34. Then went on to lose 4 straight to number 10 Miami, 62-0, on the road at Central Michigan, 37-34, on the road at James Madison, 63-7, and at home against Western Michigan, 45-42. Last week, in a crazy game, if you saw the ending to that game, an insane ending where most of the points were scored in literally the last 4 minutes, Ball State actually won their second game of the season, 37-35, on the road at Kent State, who possibly is one of the only teams that is worse than Ball State statistically across the board. So Ball State is 2-4. The comparisons have to be drawn. I want to get this out early. The comparisons have to be drawn from how we discuss Georgia State to how we are discussing Ball State. Georgia State is a better program and better team than Ball State. I want to get that out of the way early. Not significantly. I keep trying to find redeeming qualities to that Georgia State loss. It makes no sense. Georgia State is not a good football team. That scares me a little bit, that this Vanderbilt team has the capability of playing poorly enough to lose to a team like that. Granted, that was on the road. Granted, Ball State is worse. But Georgia State is a pass-heavy team. Ball State is a pass-heavy team. That scares me a little bit. Doesn't scare. That's too strong of a word. Concerns slightly. Because I'm going to give the case and continue to remind Vanderbilt fans that we're not going back to last season. We're not going back to earlier in Clark Lee's tenure to provide evidence as to why you cannot take any FBS opponent and just say, dub. You cannot do that because Vanderbilt just did it. They just lost to a shitty Georgia State team, 36-32, came out and laid a complete egg, and I know it's not the same. I know the opponents are higher quality, but we were talking about this before, and I'm still in your thunder a little bit. But Vanderbilt is coming off a win over number 1 Alabama, which was shocking to all of us, and a win over Kentucky, who before the season was one of the 3 SEC wins we highlighted as a potential victory. So a win that was more expected and a win that was shocking. To start the season before Georgia State, Vanderbilt had a win that was shocking to us at the time, Virginia Tech, that we all expected Virginia Tech to be better than they are this season. The ACC as a whole just sucks. And then a win that you kind of expected in Alcorn State. Obviously, the level of those teams is 10x on both sides of those victories. But this is the exact same scenario with a top 10 opponent on the horizon as well. With Vanderbilt had Missouri, who was number 7, and they have number 1 Texas on the horizon. So there are so many similarities to draw. It is hard to not draw those similarities. Now that I've gotten that off my chest, Ball Sack State sucks. Yeah. And Trevor, tell them why analytically.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't even draw all those comparisons. That's a really good one. So I don't know how many of you guys are into advanced analytics. Shout out to the boys at College Football Nerds for always giving really good stuff in terms of advanced analytics for college football. According to their models, which takes into consideration EPA, relative performance, all that fun stuff. Relative performance adjusts EPA based on your opponent, how good your opponent is, how bad your opponent is, so on and so forth. All that considered, analytically speaking, Ball State, according to College Football Nerds, is 132 out of 132 in college football in terms of offense and defense.
Adjust that a little bit. They're 132nd. I know that they're not last. Some FCS teams have to be above them because I know Kent State's below them.
They are below Kent State, according to College Football. They are below Kent State, according to College Football Nerds. They truly are the last, according to College Football Nerds. They did beat Kent State, like you said, but according to these numbers, they are a worse team than Kent State. Their scoring offense is number 78 in the nation. According to College Football Nerds, they score 24 points a game. Passing yards a game, 222.2. Rushing yards a game, a little under 197.8. In terms of their points per game relative performance compared to who they play week in, week out, that is negative 30%, ranking 106th in the nation. They have one of the worst defenses in the nation. You can make the argument, according to numbers, the worst defense in the nation. Give up a ton of points, give up a ton of yards, give up both in the rush and in the pass. Overall, Ball State according to the numbers, is just not a good football team. But with that being said, if you want to go back to the Georgia State preview, I pulled out advanced analytics to prove the point as to why Vanderbilt should beat the hell out of Georgia State. And Vanderbilt did not. Now, I'm not saying that Vanderbilt's going to lose this game. We will get to my predictions later, but I'm just saying Vanderbilt, according to the numbers, should handle Ball State.
Yeah, I use teamrankings.com a lot. They do a great job doing
Another great
comparison matchup stats for teams on the season. There are 134 teams in FBS football this year. Ball State's defense, according to exactly what you're saying, opponents' yards per play, Ball State is 134th out of 134 teams. They're giving up 8.1 yards per play. Ball State is giving up 48.4 points per game, 132nd in the country. Ball State is giving up 544 yards per game, 133rd in the country. A majority of Ball State's problems lie on all facets of their defense. Their run defense is terrible. Their pass defense is terrible. They give up 6.4 yards per rush. That is 133rd in the country. They're giving up 215 yards rushing per game. That is 120th in the country. They're also giving up a completion percentage of 70%. That is 127th in the country. They're giving up 10.6 yards per pass. That is last place in the country, 134th. The only redeeming quality of Ball State's entire team is their passing offense is okay. I don't even mean good, but they do throw the football a lot. Ball State throws the football 27th most in the country. They attempt the 25th most passes in the country, attempting 36 passes per game. They're not efficient. Only 6.1 yards per pass. That is 115th in the country. They do not run the ball a lot, and when they do, Ball State is terrible at it. Ball State averages 3.1 yards per rush. That is 120th in the country. They only run the ball 44% of the time. That is 108th in the country. For comparison, Vanderbilt runs the ball. Where is the stat in front of me? Vanderbilt runs the ball 63% of the time, 7th most in the country. So you have two very contrasting styles of football that are going to be on the field at the bank on Saturday.
Yeah. And this will be the last point I get to in terms of the analytics. College football nerds, you can model teams against one another to get the expected score, success rate in terms of rushes and passes. If you model these two teams based on the analytics and based on the stats, Vanderbilt should win, according to the numbers, by a score of 75.9 to 12.7. That's obviously not going to happen. But in terms of the analytics, that's what they say. Vanderbilt's rushing yards per carry offense versus Ball State's rushing defense. Vanderbilt is plus 57%. Vanderbilt's passing yards per attempt on offense versus Ball State's passing defense, plus 82% in favor of Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt rushing yards per carry on defense against Ball State's rushing offense, plus 45%. Vanderbilt's passing yards per attempt defense versus Ball State's passing offense, plus 18%. Everything lines up in Vanderbilt's favor.
And according to ESPN's Football Power Index or Matchup Predictor, whatever the hell they're calling it now, Vanderbilt has a 97.5% chance to win this game. I don't think I said it early, or I do think I said it very early in this episode, but this game is a 6 p.m. kickoff Central Standard Time, airing on SEC Network Plus / ESPN Plus. Primetime viewership audience. Gonna have dozens of people tuning into that one.
Basically the Ocho.
Yeah, it's gonna be ESPN the Ocho. But Vanderbilt opened up as a 26.5 point favorite over Ball State, currently sitting as a 26 point favorite with an over under at 58.5. Trevor, you're gonna get to our three keys to the game.
Yeah, they're gonna be very bland and very generic, to be quite frank with you guys.
I think that will be the case. But number one, I'll go ahead and do mine. Number one key to the game, and it is so obvious after what I said about Georgia State. Limit / avoid dumb plays and dumb turnovers. I specifically point to dumb plays. I can deal with what happened early in that Georgia State game, a free rush or a fumble. You can deal with that. What you can't deal with is compounding that with a safety off a kickoff. You cannot have those dumb plays. That is what allows a team that is clearly inferior, like Ball State, to stay in the game and win a game like this. So limit dumb plays and limit turnovers. Very easy to say, very obvious key, but it's something that has to happen.
Yeah, I agree. My key takeaway number one is going to be something that Vanderbilt has done all season long. We have no reason to believe they are going to change it. This is who they are as a football team. Run the ball early, run the ball often. If I'm Vanderbilt, rarely do I let Diego drop back and throw it. This should be the SETI and AJ Newberry game. Tote the rock on the ground, tire them out, keep their defense on the field for a long time, make it an ugly ball game in terms of just a slow, grinded out offensive drives. Don't make it pretty. Make them regret putting on the pads and coming out in the first quarter.
Hey, Phoebe, quit biting.
She is feeling the
on
vibes.
one. You said she was going to be well behaved. She is not.
No, she's the opposite.
I'm going to go on my key number 2. I don't even have this written down, but it's going to be win the third down battle. It is something Vanderbilt has basically done all year, but specifically in this game against, and I repeat it, an inferior Ball State opponent. Vanderbilt is very, very good on third downs. In fact, Vanderbilt is converting 50% of their third downs on the season. That ranks top 10 in the country in third down conversion percentage, coming in at number 8. Ball State, on the other hand, ranks 104th in the country, converting only 34.7% of their third downs. On defense, Vanderbilt needs to continue that. Keep Ball State, who is not a good third down offense, keep them in long down and distances, prevent them from converting. And on offense, keep the drives going, those long drives, running the football, like you said, establish the run, convert third downs. So my key number 1, limit the dumb plays, and key number 2, dominate on third downs. Those are very simple, but 2 things Vanderbilt needs to do against Ball State, a team they should be able to do those things against.
Yeah, and a little throwback to the Alcorn State game in terms of one of my keys to that game. This isn't a key to victory. This is just a key that I would like to see. Jump on a lead early, pull the starters out, jump on a lead, get out to a quick lead, a comfortable lead to where you feel like you can manage the game. Let those second and third string guys get serious playing time the rest of the game. I think that is not only big in terms of preserving the health of your starters, but also getting those second and third string guys real live snaps in a real life college football game is crucial because you never know when injuries are going to happen. You need those real live snaps. I think that's going to be a big key that I would like to see Vanderbilt capitalize on this game.
Very similar to what your key number 2 is my key number 3, but coming at it from a little bit different perspective. And this is my first cautionary moment, like I mentioned briefly previewing Ball State here. Get Diego rest, but you have to go into this game with a full 4-quarter game plan with Diego playing the whole time.
I agree.
So exactly what you said. I want to see Nate Johnson in at quarterback for most of the second half. But you have to approach this game the entire week like Diego Pavia is going to play 4 quarters. And I know you don't want to show anything and you want to keep the playbook closed, but man, you've seen it this year. You cannot even remotely come close to even the possibility of losing this game. So you got to jump out early. And there was a quote I want to pull up. I bookmarked it on Twitter. There was a quote from Clark Lee that I really liked. Billy Derrick tweeted it out of VandySports.com, friend of the pod, Billy Derrick. He said, Clark Lee on the Planet QB on Saturday, end quote. Clark Lee said, we need to put our best group out there. We won't adjust that at all. Every game is a big game for us. The focus is Saturday. Limit nothing, but the moment you get up by 2 scores, 3 scores, whatever it is, assuming that happens, because it never happened in the Georgia State game, get Diego rest. Texas, who Vanderbilt has coming up after Ball State, is playing Georgia. That is going to be a big game that they're going to get beat up in. I'm assuming they're not going to blow Georgia out of the water. That's my assumption. So Texas is not going to get rest. You have to get Diego rest, especially coming off that injury. So jump out early, go in with a full game plan, but hopefully you see Nate Johnson majority of that second half at least.
Yeah, I totally agree. My key number 3 to the game, something that we hit on earlier, Clark Lee said in his press conference today, and it has been a key staple of a Clark Lee-led defense so far this season. He loves to play coverage. He said he likes to only bring pressure with his front 4 guys. The front four is going to have to get pressure on the Ball State quarterback in order to make him feel a little worrisome in the pocket. That way they cannot capitalize and get momentum going in terms of their passing offense. So the front four is going to need to have a big game. They're going to need to step up. I do believe they can do so against an undersized and less talented offensive line. I do believe, and I would like to believe, that Vanderbilt can get pressure with their front four guys, drop the rest of the guys back, play coverage, but make that quarterback's day hell.
Kind of hard to argue with that one. So we've got our 3 keys. Trevor, you ready for predictions?
Yes, sir.
All right. You want me to go first or you want to go first?
I can go first.
You got it first?
This might sound like a little gold color glasses, but hopefully I'm spot on. I think Vanderbilt definitely wins. I think they win comfortably. I'm going to go with a final score of 41-10 Vanderbilt. I think Ball State does get a touchdown and maybe a field goal, maybe in garbage time, maybe early on. I don't know. But I'm going to go Vanderbilt 41, Ball State 10. I don't think there's very many points scored in the fourth quarter, though.
That's not crazy. Vanderbilt covers, but the under hits in Trevor's prediction. Mine's pretty similar. Number one, before I get to my prediction, and I'm going to say it before we close out the episode. Number one, if you're listening to this, I'm assuming you already are, get to the bank. If you're in the general vicinity, even if you're not fly-in, get to the bank. We're having a tailgate in Lot 2. Come out. We're going to have some fajita samples. Miller's going to be on the grill with some burgers, some dogs. We're going to have Alabama, Tennessee on TV, college game day going beforehand. We're going to have a great time. Tickets are affordable. Get to the bank. It's going to be a celebration and a good time. My prediction, I think Ball State's going to move the ball a frustrating amount. Based on what I saw, I think the weakness in Vanderbilt's defense is stopping a team that passes the ball in a spread-style offense. That's what Ball State does. So I think Ball State's going to score a little more than we're expecting. In fact, I think the first half could be a little frustrating. But I think ultimately Vanderbilt wins this one 45-17. I think that might be a little too many points overall, just because I think Vanderbilt wants to limit possessions regardless of who the opponent is. But I'm going Vanderbilt wins 45-17. I think they comfortably win, but maybe they're going into half only up 21-10 or 24-10, something like that. But I do have confidence that this team has learned. We talked about Clark Lee having learned his lesson, but I think each team now might have to individually learn their lesson.
Yeah.
And I think they learned what they needed to learn against Georgia State. You cannot take an opponent lightly. I think they will come out and dominate. So you've got Vanderbilt winning 41-10. I've got Vanderbilt winning 45-17. Everybody listening out there, come out, pack out the bank. Trevor, you got anything you want to say to close out episode 2?
I actually do. I didn't plan on this, but you brought up a good point. I am so fucking sick and tired of Vanderbilt fans complaining about crowd size. I am so tired of fans sitting at home whenever, for the first time in forever, we have a damn good football club, a really, really, really good football team. We have never in our lives seen the student section turn out the way that they have turned out, and they have turned out every single home game. We have shit on the students our entire lives, and they have changed the narrative. It is time for Vanderbilt fans to do the same. I am so the argument of, well, they need to show me something before I can come. That argument is dead. That argument is dead to rights, dead on arrival. This team has showed you more than any other Vanderbilt team has ever showed. They need to prove us nothing. I will be at the bank. Will be at the bank. His dad will be at the bank. My dad will be at the bank. My mom will be at the bank. My brother, one of my younger brothers, doesn't like college football, but he has fallen in love with Diego Pavia, and he is going to be at the bank. If you are a Vanderbilt fan and you listen to this pod and you're active on Twitter and the boards, you need to get your ass to the bank. This team deserves it. There is no more excuses. If you're not at the bank this Saturday and you live in the greater Middle Tennessee area, turn in your Vandy fandom.
You're not a real fan if you're not at the bank on Saturday. Could not put it better myself. Tickets are very affordable. SeatGeek, Ticketmaster, wherever. If you can't find tickets, which if you're completely technologically inept, and
we will find tickets for you.
We will find them for you. Show up to Lot 2. We will find tickets on an online source. So, Trevor, I think that's about it for episode 286. For myself, Will Byrum, and my co-host, Trevor Hulan, Let's pack the bank on Saturday. This has been episode 286 of the Door Report, powered by 615 Collect.